Hello friends, in this video we will discuss about the TCP transmissions and how the transmissions are made using the TCP. As we know that the TCP is a reliable protocol and this reliability is maintained by this acknowledgement. So in the TCP there is a defined acknowledgement policy. So we'll see one by one what are the different acknowledgement rules that is defined in TCP. So basically there are six rules which is defined for the acknowledgement to make all the transmissions reliable. So rule number one says when one end sends a data segment to the another end, it must include an acknowledgement. So whenever any side, either a client or server, if they are sending a data to the other end, then acknowledgement is always included, and this is called piggybacking. Whenever the acknowledgement is added in the data segment, it is called piggyback. This is called rule number one. Rule number two says that there is no need to immediately send an acknowledgement if any ends receives the packet, but it has to wait for 500 milliseconds. This is called acknowledgement timer. This is to avoid the extra traffic in the network. So whenever any packet reaches to any end, there is no need to immediately acknowledge this arrival, but it has to wait for 500 milliseconds, and after this time then acknowledgement has to be sent. Rule number 3 says there should be not more than two in order acknowledgement segment at any point of time. The meaning of this is that whenever any receiver gets two segments, then immediately it has to be acknowledged. As in the second rule, it is mentioned that the receiver should be waiting for 500 milliseconds, but if before 500 milliseconds, if the receiver is getting two packets, then it has to acknowledge immediately, and there is no need to wait for 500 milliseconds. Or you can say that there will be no two in order acknowledgement segments will be there. What does it mean? So as per the rules 2, it says if this is a scenario, if something is delivered, this is sender, this is receiver. If something is delivered to this end, then there is no need to immediately send an acknowledgement, but it has to wait for 500 milliseconds and then deliver the acknowledgement. This says rule number 2. But the rule number 3 says that if something is delivered, so as per the rule, it has to wait for 500 milliseconds. But the third rule says that if something is coming, means if two packets are coming from the sender and reaches receiver, then it should not wait for 500 milliseconds, but immediately it has to be acknowledged. So any two packets which are reaching to the receiver side, then immediately it needs to be acknowledged. This is rule number 3 of acknowledgement. Now fourth rule deals with the out of order sequence. That means if any out of order sequence number is reaching to the receiver, then immediately it needs to be acknowledged. What does it mean? It means the receiver is expecting sequence number 500, let's say, and it is getting sequence number 600. Then in that case, immediately this need to be acknowledged that I am waiting for acknowledgement, I am waiting for the sequence number 500. Now when this kind of scenario will arise, this may arise, let's say receiver is waiting for sequence number 500, and from the sender side it has delivered two packet 500 to 550 and 551 to 600. Let's say this is the scenario, and this packet get lost or get delayed in the network, but this packet is reaching to the other side. So receiver is waiting for 500 but is receiving 551, which is out of order. So in that case, immediately it has to acknowledge that I am waiting for sequence number 500. This is rule number 4. Rule number 5 says whenever any missing segment arises, then also immediately the acknowledgement has to be made. And rule number 6 says if there is any duplicate segment arrive, if the receiver gets any packet with the same sequence numbers which he has already received, then also the acknowledgement need to be delivered immediately. Now these acknowledgement policies or the rules are always taken into consideration whenever the transmission is happening in the TCP. So we'll see some examples. So this is one example. We can see that the client and server, the client is sending data with the sequence number 1201 to 1400, and this is something acknowledgement sent to the server. That means already the client has received some data bytes up to 4000, and now it is saying that I need for the 4001. Now this is rule number 1. Rule number 1 says whenever any data is delivered, always include the acknowledgement. So this is rule number 1. It goes to the server. The server want to send some data, and again with the rule number 1, along with the data it is including the acknowledgement. Now it goes to the other side. Now there is also always an acknowledgement timer that keeps a track that how much time has already been passed, because as per the rule 2, there is no need to immediately acknowledge but has to wait for 500 milliseconds. So when this packet reaches to this side, this acknowledgement timer will start and will wait for 500 milliseconds. Means it will start, and after 500 milliseconds this is to be acknowledged. Now it goes to the server. Now here server want to send one packet, and every time whenever it is sending some data, acknowledgement is always there. It sends second packet, again acknowledgement is always there. Now when the first packet reaches to the client side, this is not immediately acknowledged, but a timer will start and it will be counting 500 milliseconds to acknowledge. But before this 500 milliseconds got to expire, the second packet reaches to this side. So as per the rule number 3, there is no need to wait till the 500 milliseconds, but immediately you need to acknowledge it. So rule number 3 will come into picture and it is acknowledged. So you can see that how the rule number 1, 2 and 3 is applicable during this transmission. We'll see some more rules. Now let us take one scenario here. The client delivers this packet with the sequence number, and as a rule whenever the data is delivered it will always mention the acknowledgement number. So it reaches here, it sends 2 packets, and whenever the 2 packet is reaching to this side, as a rule number 3, it needs to be immediately acknowledged, because this site cannot have 2 in order sequences unacknowledged. This is not possible, because as per the rule 3 it needs to be acknowledged immediately. Now it goes here, then let's say one more packet is delivered. Actually 2 packet delivers from the client side. One is sequence number 701 to 800 and 801 to 900, but this packet got lost. Now here the server says acknowledgement number 701 means it is expecting byte number 701, but because this packet get lost and it is reaching this 801, so immediately whenever any out of order sequences is reaching, it needs to acknowledge that this is the byte number I am expecting. So this is because of rule number 4, this is acknowledged and telling that I am expecting 701. Now you can see here here you can notice that because there is no uh, receiver, whenever the packet is delivered there is a kind of timer called RTO timer is called retransmission timer. Whenever the packet is delivered, this timer will be started and will wait for the value of the RTO. If within this time there is no acknowledgement received, then the packet will be retransmitted. So here you can see that when this packet is delivered, this timer gets started and it has to wait for some duration, and this is the, let's say, duration. And if within this duration, if there is no acknowledgement, if there is no acknowledgement for this packet, then it will be resent. So you can see here that this packet is delivered because this is lost, so definitely this will not be acknowledged. So again, when the timer got expire, this will be resent. Now you can see here that when this packet is reaching here, now this is something which is missing. So whenever this missed packet is reaching here, so another immediately there's kind of acknowledgement is sent that now which byte number is expected. So you can see here this is already been received at this side but is not discarded. Why is it not discarded? The rules say if whenever any out of order sequences are reached, the receiver need to send the immediate acknowledgement that what byte is expected, but at the same time the out of order bytes will be actually stored at the receiver buffer, but it will not be supplied to the process. The process will the all the bytes will be only supplied to the process when they are in order. So here you can see only these two means kind of sequences will be supplied to the process for the process for the processing, but uh, this set of bytes will not be supplied until they all will be in order. So here you can see that how the rule number 5 is implemented. Whenever the missing segment is reaching to the other side, it will be immediately acknowledged to the sender that this is the particular byte number I am waiting. Then you can see this is another scenario to understand this rule number 6. So the packet is delivered, two packets are delivered. This is 501 to 600 with acknowledgement X. This is rule number 1. Again, this is following the rule number 1. Data is delivered and also carries the acknowledgement. Now two packet is delivered, and because of the rule number 3, that whenever the two in order packets are in sequence packets are reaching to the receiver, it needs to be acknowledged. So it will send an acknowledgement, but this acknowledgement get lost, and since this acknowledgement is not reaching to this side, and the retransmission timeout will be happening, means the expire means, as we know that whenever this packet is delivered, this timer will start, and if within the expiry of this timer if there is no acknowledgement, it will resend the packet. So because this packet is lost, this packet will be retransmitted, but because this is actually received at the receiver side, so this is a duplicate packet for the receiver. So this is rule number 6. Whenever there is a duplicate packet received, immediately you have to send the acknowledgement to the sender that this is what I am expecting, and this duplicate packet will be rejected. So this is how these 6 acknowledgement rules are actually working to make these overall transactions reliable and meaningful. Hope this will help you and you are able to make transmissions in TCP. Thank you.